Good morning, everybody, on this snowy Tuesday morning, last Tuesday in November. To our Police Service Board meeting. Briar is in the secretary seat today in Nancy's absence, and Nancy's not feeling well, so she has Briar here. Although Nancy, I believe, is joining us online, so she's watching us make sure that we still are in line. But Briar will be taking the minutes for today for us, which I'm sure some of you are very familiar with Briar. So this is her first time doing the Police Service Board meeting, which is a great opportunity for her. Attendance has been taken, and we have everybody accounted for. Marty Verhey sends his regrets for today, but we still have quorum with the four of us here. So we had an addendum sent out, and I'm not sure if there's any other agenda items that anybody wants to raise to include, but we have our agenda in front of us. If no items, I'll seek a motion to approve. Mayor Bailey, thank you, and Member Brown. All those in favor? And that's carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Any to declare at this time? None? Thank you. We have no delegations, petitions, or presentations at this time. For the new year, we'll try and line up Crime Stoppers. They're interested in coming in to speak with us to give us an update. And also our Zone 4 rep from the Solicitor General's office. I want to say his name is Chris Harepath, but I hope it's not wrong. Is that right?
Is it David Tilley?
David Tilley, thank you. I see, there you go. Thank you, Inspector Quenville. He's waiting until he has enough information to be able to come in and talk to us, because as you know, we've been waiting for information on the new Police Services Act, and so he'll be coming in the new year at some point. We've got him on standby once he has something to actually share with us. So that being said, we have the minutes from our previous meeting from October 24th in our package. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we'll have a motion then to approve those minutes. Councillor Pierce, seconded by Member Brown. All those in favor? And that's carried. Any business arising from the minutes anybody would like to discuss? Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just a comment in regards to the Remembrance Day ceremonies. I know in Paris there was a lot of people down, which was fantastic. And I've heard that the other ceremonies that went on also had large crowds there. So I don't know if it was the fact that it was a Saturday, but it sure was nice to see the people out and respecting those that did their thing so we could do our thing. So
Great.
it was I think it was a good day all around.
And thanks to each of you for splitting up amongst the county to make sure that we were participating in each of the Remembrance Day services. So that's great. We'll just jump in then to item number 7, and we'll turn it over to Inspector Quenville for the detachment commander's report.
Thank you, Chair Haley, and good morning, everyone. Jumping right into the report, there were no staffing changes during the month of October, although there are a number of changes in the months ahead that we can discuss later on in the meeting. No public complaints during this reporting period. For our community safety and well-being team, there were 17 mental health related calls in the month of October, where our MCERT worker attended 9 of the calls in crisis, in addition to 19 COAST referrals for follow-up. Of the 17 mental health calls, 7 of those resulted in apprehensions, and the mean time spent in the emergency room with apprehensions was just under an hour and 20 minutes times 2 officers. The total time spent was just over 18 hours for the month. There was a range from just over 3 hours to 15 minutes for the amount of time officers were spending in the ER. The work on the Citizen Youth Academy is continuing. We've had upwards of 20 applications to date, so screening is ongoing, and we're looking forward to getting that started in the new year. The Victim Services Grant and the upcoming Youth Empowerment and Violence Prevention Symposium is set for March 27th, and PC Murphy's been busy with the planning of those events. Our mental health related calls continue to trend upwards. For 2023, we're at the highest levels that we've been in the last 5 years. The other notables for this month, PC Murphy's worked with our MCERT worker and McMaster Hospital on some complex cases supporting youth in our community. And there continues to be an increase in domestic violence calls for the month. And PC Murphy's continue to work closely with victim services on safety planning and support. Our Youth and School Resource Officer report, just draw your attention to, as I'm sure you've noticed, there's additional information provided this month. PCL Lucy, as I introduced at the last meeting, is new to this position, and just taking an opportunity to provide you with some additional information. So certainly open to feedback as to whether it is helpful or is something you'd like to continue to see as part of your Police Service Board report. Of note, on November 15th, the Grand Erie District School Board sent messaging out to the families that we heard about when Mr. Peter Ash was here and presented as a delegation. That messaging needed to go out to the families prior to police returning to the schools. So that has in fact happened, but not until November 15th, unfortunately. The chart that PCL Lucy has provided contains a number of youth-involved occurrences from 2020 to present, so youth being age 12 to 17. The chart's comparing the total amount per year as well as the year-to-date data. So as you can see, we've seen a significant increase in the number of youth involvement this year compared to the past 3 years. In the month of October, there were 77 youth-involved occurrences, ranging between criminal code type events, provincial offenses, and police assistance calls, the outcome of which 7 youth were charged and 9 were warned. Our community service and media officer was busy this past month engaging with fight fraud presentations, community safety walk in Brant North, 2 fraud presentations, as well as meeting with Woodview Mental Health and Autism Services with the Brant North Community Safety Group. In terms of community engagement, we have our focus patrols there for the month of October, a number of which officers continue to provide support and patrols to deter any criminal or public mischief of those occurrences or traffic-related incidents. Our traffic management unit continues to be engaged in the community, and for the month of October, laid 152 Part 1 charges, just over 2,100 charges for year to date. Our Crime Stoppers for the month of October, we had 5 tips come in. This past month, I also had an opportunity to meet with the executive director of Crime Stoppers, Mr. John Hart, and the Brantford Police Chief to discuss the Crime Stoppers program and its support to the county and Six Nations. Brantford Police has committed to having their officer remain, as the liaison, and will become full-time in those responsibilities as of January 1st. So that was a positive outcome of that meeting. In terms of noteworthy occurrences for October, on October 5th, it's not captured here, but certainly worth mentioning, our Community Street Crime Unit was involved in a drug trafficking investigation in Brant County and partnered with other surrounding counties. As a result, 2 persons were charged with drug, weapons, and property-related offenses that included a stolen vehicle. Also of note, you'll see on October 15th, police responded to a break and enter at a residential construction site. Worth mentioning because, again, this is part of target hardening that we've been talking about at past meetings, and this is only one occurrence reported, although I've seen a number of them over the past couple of months, and the need to not only take our keys out of our vehicles, but properly store tools and valuables at our ongoing construction sites, of which there are many throughout the county. Our impaired related events continue to be slightly above last year. We had 8 last month, for year to date, we're at 68. Our ride events are considerably higher than they were in 22. We're at 492 year to date. In terms of our trends and actions, violent crime for October was up 6.7% compared to last year, and that's only an increase of one incident, and up 30%, just over 30% year to date. There was a slight increase in the assaults and a decrease in sexual assaults. Property crime shows a decrease of 32.4% for October. That's from 71 incidents to 48. There were decreases in B&Es, theft under 5,000, theft over 5,000, mischiefs and frauds. There was a slight decrease of 33% for October, and a 9.1 decrease for year to date for drug crime. In relation to our motor vehicle collisions, there were no roadway fatalities in October, and our personal injury collisions decreased in October compared to last year by 38.5%. Property damage collisions showed an increase of just over 15%, and overall year to date, we're just under 4% for our collisions. There were 10 stolen vehicles this past month and 5 recovered. Theft for motor vehicle increased slightly with 11 this past month compared to 10 in 2022. Mental health calls showed an increase of 20% compared to last year, and year to date we're just over 7% increase in mental health calls. 911 calls were significantly down in October compared to 2022. There were 22 incidents in 2022 and only 5 this past month. Alarm calls were slightly down for October by 4.2% and down 16.8% year to date. And domestic disturbance calls increased this October by just over 9% and are down slightly for the year. That is my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Inspector Quenzo. I guess I'll just, before I open it up, I'll just start off that the report on page 11 and 12 from the resource officer, certainly open to what, I think it's important that we have the perspective of the youth information that's being provided, but I know I am, I don't know about the others, but I'm open to, is there a different format? Is there a better format? Is there a new way of doing it? Certainly open to that, but I think having the perspective of the youth incidents and the engagement in the schools is still an important piece of the report. But now that you have a new person, working there, we want to make sure that they can make it their own as well and provide valuable information. The second page on page 12, that piece there, that's new for us, and I guess this confirms what a lot of people have been kind of expressing, but this is concerning to see the number of youth incidences, the number of youth involved in occurrences increasing so dramatically year over year, and concerning for our communities as well. Whether that's connected to specific things, connected to some of the mental health challenges that you noted earlier with PC Murphy, a number of things there. Only goes to show how important it is that the officer has that relationship with the youth in the community in the first place. So maybe we're seeing a little bit of the absence coming back as well to show in the statistics. Perhaps not, but I do like that. I do like that piece of information on page 12 in terms of how that shows that comparison. I know my colleagues here will have other questions and comments, so before I go any further, I'll open the floor. I know I can count on Councillor Pierce for some questions. Yes, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, a couple. So on page 9, when you talk about the Citizen Youth Academy, you said 20 applications to date. Is there a cap on that?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, ideally we were looking at no more than 20, just to ensure we would like the program to have very interactive and hands-on opportunities to avoid or to ensure that everybody has a good opportunity. 20 was kind of the maximum we were looking towards.
Thank you. And on that same page, you spoke, PC Murphy completed and submitted the CSP grant interim report for the year 2 of the traffic grant. Do we have any idea as to how much is available for us through that grant?
Yes, I'm just trying to remember the number off the top of my head. I know we have an additional 30,000 to spend prior to the end of this fiscal, and an additional 30 next year as well.
Okay.
The project that was announced a couple of years ago, I think. Councillor Pierce, I think. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And then if we go to page number 12, and the youth involved in occurrences, as Chair Haley said, it's interesting data to see because it shows that there is some troubled youth, I'll call it. I'll put it that way. But what I'm trying to understand here, and you noted that the note from the school board went out November 15th for the resource officer back in the schools. I'm wondering if we can correlate the huge increase of the number of youth involved in occurrences to not having that there. And I know it's kind of a moot point now because they're putting it back in, but if we were to somehow show these stats to the school board and say, you know, see, this is potentially a result of you pulling those resource officers, you know, don't ever do it again type thing. You know, it's just one of those kind of reminders to them of how important this is. If we can put a correlation between them. Personally, I can see, if you look through the years, like it's a drastic rise at the end of 2022 into 2023, and that was just about when they pulled the resource officers, right? So again, I'm not sure how we can wrap that up in a nice little bow, not an I told you so bow, but something to the school board to say, you know, this is what's happened, because my gut's telling me now that we're going to have that resource officer back in there, that number's going to come back down. Just my feeling on that.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think, you know, just seeing this data initially, there might be an opportunity to break it down perhaps a little bit further. I know Constable Luzzi speaks about, you know, including criminal code, provincial offenses, and police assist calls. It might be helpful, perhaps, I guess it'll be the new year, to look to drill down on that a little bit deeper to have an understanding of what that 628 includes. That might help provide some perspective. But to your point, Councillor Pierce, I don't disagree, although it may be anecdotal and hard to draw any direct lines from the absence of officers in the school to this number, but it may be helpful to look a little deeper at the data.
No, I'd appreciate that. Like I say, and you're right. It's a hard line to connect there, but my brain went there as soon as I saw that number. I went, "Whoa, okay." So, but anyway, thank you, Madam Chair.
Before you carry on, can I just add to that page 12 discussion?
Certainly. You're the chair.
I just wanted to highlight, I guess, the concern, and maybe perhaps some of the data breakdown could be elementary versus high school as well, just to kind of get a flavor of. But what concerns me when I read here, you know, 4 instances with elementary schools, including assault, threatening, and sexual assault. Involved youth were all under 12 years of age. That is some kind of concerning to see that situation happening, and the type of things that our youth are being, you know, and teachers and educators and administrators and police officers like that. I guess times are changing in the county. We're not the small rural towns and villages that we have had, and I think we need to think about strategies for our youth that will help support them and stave off some of this type of behavior as well. It's unacceptable, and how do we help them? Anyways, just wanted to highlight that, because that, when we start talking about children under 12, those types of behaviors can potentially carry on into adulthood, and that's concerning.
Yes.
Carry on, sorry.
Yep. Just and then one final one here on page 16. when you talk about the 10 stolen vehicles this month, 5 were recovered. Are there stats out there, and I'm not sure why I want to know, but so there was 10 stolen vehicles this month, 5 recovered. Were those 5 vehicles stolen this month, or are they back like a year, or are they back 6 months? I'm not sure if there's any stats on that.
Through you, Madam Chair. We would know that data. I just don't have it as part of the report. If that's something, like, I could certainly provide some perspective going forward if that's something that the board would like to see, because sometimes they, they're recovered in our county. They may have been recovered, weeks or months after they were stolen, but we would have that data as part of our analysis.
Okay, no, and it's I don't want to put any more work. I was just curious as to how long it takes sometimes to get stolen vehicles back. That's great. And then I'll finish it off with a comment, Madam Chair, about the 911 calls. It's great when you go from 22 calls to 5 calls. Something's working. I'm not sure what it is, but something appears to be working, so that's great news. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pierce. Mayor Bailey?
Through you, Madam Chair. Do we share victim services with Brantford, so Penny Vicar and the dog and all of those people? Or do we have our own hangout at the Health Hub?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, we do share. The Victim Services uses an office in our building 3 times a week. So off the front foyer there. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they're often there.
Perfect. Same staff though from the city.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
With the domestic disturbance increase, and I believe there was another stat that talked about maybe sexual assaults, but I guess it's not much of a question, more of a comment. I think in our community safety and well-being plan, these are the types of things we're trying to strategically look at. How do we decrease, right? How do we help support the community? And so I think we need to keep an eye on some of these things, and how I know Emily with the county is working on different strategies and tactics for her action plan, but these are the types of things that need some time and attention, and some programs and resources that hopefully will help in the community as well. Any other questions for Inspector Quenneville about the statistics? I guess just for comment, since people do watch this that does not quite the right thing, this video later, is that the report here is a snapshot in time. The context, the information, we want to make sure that people understand that data changes, and that, it's hard to interpret without the context of having the time frame that goes along with it. Any other questions? Any other points, Inspector Quenneville, for you?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other discussion on that, then we'll have a motion to receive. Thank you, Mayor Bailey. Councillor Pierce, all those in favor? And that's approved, thank you. Okay, in our package 8.1, Nancy had put together our calendar for 2024. And you'll have the memo in your package. She looked at all the different meeting dates of the 4th Tuesday of the month, and then also tried to correlate that with commitments that might have conferences with council members that you might be attending, what have you. So she's proposed on page 28 the different dates for 2024, and at this time we need to either indicate if there's concerns or approve as presented. I believe some of council, you'll be at different Good Roads in April, so we had to bump back, and February has been rescheduled because there is, I don't know any more information on it, but there's supposedly going to be a Community Safety and Policing Act Summit scheduled for the end of February that potentially some of us might want to attend. So she's bumped that to the 29th. So other than that, if we're all okay, that would leave August, as we normally do, off. And then December being the way that fourth Tuesday falls, we leave the December meeting if necessary, should we need it. So that would give us the 10 meetings for the year. So if there's no concerns with any of the dates presented, and we can always adjust as we go through the year if needed at the will of the board, but we'll need a motion here to approve the proposed 2024 meeting calendar. Member Brown, seconded by Councillor Pierce. All those in favor? And that's carried, thank you. Okay, alarm statistics, 8.2 in your package. Heather, I don't know if you'd like to review that with everybody.
Sure, thank you. Through the chair, this is just our monthly alarm statistics. I had committed earlier this year to, when it came to budget time, to going through the options if the board is interested in making a change to the program. This is probably a good time to do so that we could implement for January 1st. But this is for your consideration and any action if you're interested.
Great, thank you. So I know we've talked about in the past whether or not the scale of fees is the appropriate deterrent. And, you know, as we escalate through the warning process, and we've got the table to show us the trends. And I guess I'll open the floor for discussion if there's any desire to want to make any changes at this time. Councillor Pierce.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So, first of all, a comment that there seems to be a continued reduction. So that's a great thing. In that same, on page 30, I guess it would be like the third paragraph below that chart, it finishes when it says one industrial property had 5 responses in 2022 and a further 3 in 2023, which may warrant a meeting with the owners to discuss steps to reduce false alarms. When we say may, who makes that decision? Because I would suggest that shouldn't be a may. It should be there should be some sort of meeting. I'm curious as to who makes that call.
Heather?
Through the chair, we don't actually have a process of any one specific person designated to go and start having these discussions or meeting with these owners. So I don't know if it'd be someone from the police or someone from the county or maybe one of each. We don't have a process in place yet to actually like reach out to these people, say, hey, you know, like what's going on? What can we do to reduce these numbers? So that's why it's May, because we don't actually have a process for that yet.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, yeah, and now when these false alarm or when these alarms go off, I'm assuming that police and fire would both be dispatched. Is that a fair statement? Do we know?
Through you, Madam Chair, depending on the type of alarm, but in most cases it would likely just be us.
Okay. All right, yeah, I think that's something that we need to discuss further to understand a process around that, because yeah, I mean, like there's an example right there where there was, you know, there's 8 occurrences in 2 years, and there's either an issue with the system or something needs to be tweaked, so to speak. So I would like to look into that a little bit further. Then if we go down to page 32, when we talk about and we've talked about this before, the removal of the clause for that refreshes the numbers at fault at the end of each calendar year. You state in there that we're going to clear them again at 2024 because it will require some additional administration from the county's finance group, so not likely until 2025. Can I just understand, like, obviously there's more to it than what I think, because my way of thinking is we would just have to, in essence, tweak a bylaw to say that it's not refreshing. I'm curious as to why we can't do it in January of 2024.
My only concern was that we haven't given any kind of notice to anybody that we were going to, like everybody's working through 2023 on the basis that at the end of the year we start over. So, I mean, it's the board decision. There's no reason why you can't start January 1st, 2024. But I was coming at it from like a notice to the owners kind of. position that they don't know that this is coming, and then, you know, they may not have, we'd have to double check our records. We'd have to be super clear, like, to make sure that those addresses are absolutely, you know, this is the current owner. We'd also need a process. If they change owners, do we start with the new owner? Or do we carry over from what the old owner had of a new property? So there is more to think about if we do go to 2024. But again, I just said, you know, if we want to be completely upfront, you know, next year, you know, any that you have next year are also going to carry over and still count towards. And do we do it indefinitely? Do we ever have a refresh? There are some
Okay,
discussions,
yeah.
right?
Sorry, yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, that's, I appreciate that explanation, and maybe the conversation of the, you know, having a meeting with those that seem to have more than others, and then maybe, I guess, wait for the 2025, but yeah, like I say, in my mind, it's one of those that, I think maybe, you know, and we had talked about it before, like if you go, you know, maybe a full calendar year without one, then maybe it resets. I don't know. I know there's more discussion to have, but it just seems that we've got for whatever reason, we've got a few bad apples in the basket that seem to be repeat offenders. It could be issues with the alarm system itself. It could be they don't care, or it could be who knows what, right? But I think definitely whether we have to have set some time aside in one of our meetings, Madam Chair, to discuss this further as to, you know, what we would think, and obviously, Inspector, you guys would be involved with that as to your aspect of it as well. But to me, it's just I don't want to say waste of time, because you don't know that it's a false alarm until you get there. So they're going on the information that there's an alarm somewhere. Let's check it out. That's part of the process. But that may be, in fact, taking them away from something that's a lot more important, right? So definitely more conversation needs to be had on this, and I think it behooves us to have that conversation sooner rather than later.
I would agree with you, and I think we need to incentivize people into compliance somehow, some way. And I think that's been my look at my strategy all along has been, how do we decrease these calls, because our police have better things to do than go to false alarm calls. So, is there any other discussion on any of this before we get into some action items and next steps, Mayor Bailey?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think it should maybe look like, even if it's not a county, I think the county should follow up on not the police. I think once you've been there and done your thing, I don't want them to think that it's a police. You know, if we're going to use not the excuse, but the reason that the police have better things to do, because they do, then maybe they shouldn't have the time to go and follow up on them. I think it would be better to have it from the county. They don't know if it's a bylaw officer, a counselor, staff. Someone from the county would maybe make the appointment and sit down and talk to them. Other than the police, I think maybe might be a good idea. But I mean, you said maybe both, but I'm thinking that if we're going to say like this and the police are busy, then maybe they could be too busy to come to that meeting to talk to them about how busy they are. And I think it would be the same as if we had trouble with their taxes, or if we had trouble with something else. It would be the county that would speak to them, be it whoever that is from the county. I'm not sure who that would be, but it would be county staff. That's how I see it anyway.
Thank you. Member Brown?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Heather, this is a great report. I think we need to remember where we came from. When we first put this policy into place, you would look at the numbers being almost reversed on the bottom of the page, where it was 3 or 4 or 6 companies were 25% of the false alarms. That's not the case here now, so I think it's definitely moving in the right direction. Obviously, we can have a debate on whether there should be a reset or not, but I'm curious to see how it continues over the next short term, because there's 5 addresses had 3 responses. That's nothing compared to what it was 4 or 5 years ago. So I do think that it is working in the right direction. I think it's a good news story, and I appreciate the information.
Thank you. I do agree with Councillor Pierce about hitting the refresh piece. A lot of other municipalities don't provide that restart. That's carried on. I know City of Guelph definitely doesn't provide a restart on their system. But certainly something to look at. So your suggestion then of spending some time at a future meeting. So nothing today in terms of decisions, but perhaps the January meeting, you would like to look at a process potentially for meeting with those folks, and then more discussion on how the refresh would work. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, Madam Chair, it is, and I, like I say, I appreciate Heather's response there in the sense that, you know, there's more to this than meets the eye in the fact of understanding, you know, like she says, has there been ownership change, who these companies are, that sort of thing. So I can appreciate that's, you know, we can't turn that around in a minute, so to speak. But I think if we collectively have a discussion as to, you know, how we want to go forward and kind of set ourselves up to move forward, and then we understand, okay, so maybe some work can start as to, you know, who these are, and I don't know if as a county we would send something out to all businesses. I don't know, because I guess if there's some there that have never had an alarm but all of a sudden have an alarm, they're going to want to understand the process too, right? So, you know, as I continue to speak through this, there's more layers to this onion. So, but yeah, I think we should set some time aside at our next meeting just to understand what we want to see, as opposed, like, as far as, you know, whether we reset, meet with these people after X number of false alarms, or how that goes. We definitely need something documented that we can fall back on to say, hey, yes, this is our process, and then we just follow it as we go forward.
Is that, Heather, Cindy, I'm not sure who this goes to, but is that enough direction for now? I guess we would need some of your thoughts on what that looks like for a future meeting, so we're not starting with a blank page, perhaps. And I don't know what the process has been in the past with the OPP engagement with these calls. If there's questions about security and that type of thing, I'm sure there's enough resources out there for people to get what they need for help to make sure their alarms are working or not working, or whatever the case may be. To Jim's point, we have seen an improvement, which is the whole point, but there's also room to keep improving and to keep looking at that. So I'm not really sure what the timing is like for you guys, because I don't want to be unrealistic with.
I think January is a good time to bring this back forward, because we won't be issuing any bills for 2024 until February, after the January numbers. So I think if the board at the next meeting wants to give its intention that we're going to do this, even if we don't have all the I's dotted and T's crossed in how we're going forward, but as long as by the next meeting, if we give the intention, we can at least start putting in the letters we send out to everybody for their first alarm, their warning, that just so you know, the intention is next year these are not going to refresh. So, you know, if you need to take action to whatever, something to that effect.
Sure.
But I think January is a good time to at least come to a decision if the board's looking to move in that direction.
Great. Is everybody good with that then, to bring it back to the January meeting for further discussion on a couple of those items? Thanks, Heather, for that. So if there's no other discussion or any other items you want to raise, we do need a motion to receive the staff report on false alarm statistics. Member Brown, seconded by
Sure.
Councillor Pierce. All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Heather, for all of your help on that. Okay, so we're now moving to our budget process for 2024. Hard to believe it's just around the corner. 2024 is waiting for us. We have a report from Heather on the draft budget, and then there's an addendum. When I was chatting with Heather about different things, we decided it might be best just to kind of put some of those thoughts on paper so that everybody had a chance to kind of review them ahead of time. So some of those suggestions might already be in some of the things that Heather had encapsulated in her budget. Some may not, but maybe we can start with Heather's report, and then we can go from there to talk about where we want to see the budget moving forward. So I'll turn that over to Heather.
Thank you. Through the chair, the budget I'm presenting is based strictly on your 2023 budget with just a small increase for the salaries. So I have provided some commentary on the various sections, some that I think absolutely need to be increased, some that we can probably adjust downward a little bit to offset some of that. The one big decision that I think this board needs to look at is the number of Brant dispatch distributions through the community. Do we want to go make sure that every household in the county gets one? I think we're probably at the point we can't be skipping the houses that are on the outlier boundaries just for the cost of money. But whether we do one or two is going to make a big difference in the board's budget. So there are a few items on there for your consideration. Any adjustments we make will be added into the operating budget that'll be presented to council in January.
Great, thanks, Heather. So just because I've done a little bit of a deeper dive, I'll share with you my thoughts, and then we can open up the floor for some conversation. In talking to Heather, like our line item for public relations / awards is like, it catches a lot of things in that line item, and there might be some opportunity to put some sub accounts or different line items underneath that, just so that we're all clear what all that includes. Help us understand how that all gets derived. Correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, but also the second dispatch expenses aren't yet included in the year-to-date expenses for this year?
That is correct, yeah.
Right.
That one is still going to see a pretty significant hit.
Right, so if we are looking at this year's budget of what we've already spent and then comparing that to plan for next year, keep in mind that the second dispatch expenses, printing and postage is not included in the actuals for 2023 at this point. That hasn't hit the budget at this point. So something to keep that in mind. So when we have the public relations awards things, I believe the 2 dispatch newsletters have come in there. We've included things like the golf tournament, emergency services golf tournament, the detachment breakfasts, the different things like that have come in that grouping. Correct me if I'm wrong, if I go offline here, Heather. And then there's things in here that we haven't used in the past either. We didn't use materials and supplies, for example, $1,500. So maybe that can be reallocated somewhere else. Or if there's something we think we need to use that for. Same with legal, we haven't used that. My understanding is if we came across an issue in the future where legal may be needed, it might be an unbudgeted expense and we would just have to deal with it at the time. But do we need to set aside money every year and then not actually use it? That's another consideration. We've put a significant amount in training and development over the past couple of years, knowing that we do have some training requirements of us that still have yet to come, and they still keep telling us it's coming in the spring. So there is some merit to including training and development, and in those line items is also the OAPSB conference attendance registration fees for those who choose to go. But not all 5 of us have traditionally gone to that conference, so there is some discussion there that we could have. I don't know if there's any questions for Heather on this first before we kind of transition into some of the proposed additional ideas. Councilor Pierce?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So just to confirm again, so the fall edition is not included in the public relations there, so that's probably going to be another 7 or 8 there. And then, the thing that sticks out in my mind, and although you say, there's training that we can do and conferences and that sort of thing, I think we've got definitely some wiggle room in that line for sure. And I'm not saying take it all away by any means, but I think we could probably adjust that by a few $1,000s anyway that can be used elsewhere. Other than that, I think it's we're pretty close. That $2,000 in legal services, even though that's budgeted in there, my thought on that would be, that's a half a sentence with a lawyer for $2,000. So that's really not going to buy us much, to be honest. if we ever do in a situation that we need that. So whether it's $2,000 there or zero there, in my mind, it's not, the $2,000, if we were going to need something like that, is a drop in the bucket, potentially of what we might require. So to me, there's definitely a couple lines there that we can adjust to move some things around. But other than that, I think a lot of it is pretty good.
Great. So if you'll go ahead, sorry, Cindy. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to know, because I was just asked to approve the invoices for the Fall Dispatch newsletter. So the printing costs were $5,200 and the Canada Post costs were $4,400. That was for one edition.
There you go. Councilor Pierce?
So thanks, Madam Chair. So 9,600, and yet the spring was 77. Spring was 75, or no, 77, I guess. So I'm just wondering, like, if things gone up that much?
Through the chair, I'm not really able to answer that question because I wasn't involved with the first edition. I can look into that further just to see what the discrepancy is.
Yeah, because I'm just curious because that's a couple $1,000, right? That's,
I know printing has definitely increased substantially over the past couple of years.
I can appreciate that, but we're going spring to fall, right?
Yeah.
So it's not. So
We'll let Cindy check into that for
A
us.
small part of that would be because the numbers I'm using are from our finance system, which would not have the HST included. So she's looking at the invoices, which would have the HST. So 15%, but that is a not entirely insignificant number.
John's doing the math right now.
I am. Okay, thanks, Madam Chair.
No, that's great. So just some context then, in terms of our next steps in the discussion. One of the things that Inspector Quenville and I wanted to get a good understanding of was just, how does the reserve fund potentially work? How does that we have from the proceeds of property sales? What should we consider some of the parameters for that? We met with Allison Newton, Cindy, and Heather to just talk about budgeting in general. Inspector Quenville was able to have a good chat as well about like her the detachment facilities and how the county is supporting the building, which is not our purview, but was able to have that kind of conversation. And so then I was able to get some good insight. And so I don't know if Cindy, you want to explain a little bit, but from what that meeting I understand from Allison and Cindy is that there isn't really anything that prevents the Police Service Board from purchasing equipment outside of the OPP contract. There isn't a requirement for anything to go back to, and I'm probably not saying it the right way, but there isn't a requirement for things to go back to council necessarily. When it comes to the reserve fund, if there's things that the Police Service Board feels that is in the best interest of public interest that we want to allocate things to, we are able to do that without necessarily that second step. Of course, using the same parameters about it being county property and all the things that we have as concerns about it as well. Allison did mention, if the Police Service Board in the future wants to look at setting up planned programs or planned budgeting outside of the OPP contract, that's something certainly that staff would talk to us about if that was something we wanted to do. So that's kind of helped inform some of the. So I then went to Inspector Quenville and said, what is needed with respect to the reserve funds that we have? What would make a difference to the team? What would help? And so in my memo that I put together, I took the balance that Heather had noted of we have $5,728.42 currently in that proceeds of property sales reserve fund. Heather has taken the past couple of years. You see the actuals, and she's carried forward any of the unspent dollars. So with that, suggesting that, or with Inspector Quenville's input, there's an opportunity to purchase some bicycles for community engagement so that the officers can actually do some bike patrols within the community. There's the information that Inspector Quenville provided is in there. There's some quotes in there. There's some discussion about, right now the proposal is for 3. It can come out of the 2023 budget because it is the reserve funds. We do have the funds available, so that could get started so that we're talking about the first snow of the winter today, but when the spring comes, the bikes are ready to go, and they're we have staff that have taken the appropriate training courses to be able to do that and to conduct the patrols. So we've got staff trained, but we have no bikes for them to do the patrols on. So my first proposal is that we would consider allocating some of those reserve funds from the property sales towards the purchase of the bikes. I think that'll really help us with some of the community engagement and the foot patrol type things that we would want to do. And I'll let Inspector Quenville speak to that more, perhaps if there's anything that anybody has any questions on, or you want to add anything, Inspector Quenville, to the notes that we have there.
Through you, Madam Chair. The notes are fairly comprehensive in providing the reasoning for the bicycle request, and also to say that we do have trained officers that are able to put those resources into action right away. Certainly, the one item that's probably not captured here is the impact to morale. Certainly, the officers that have that training look forward to being able to use that, and certainly offer some additional job satisfaction in being able to do bicycle patrols and the interaction that it allows with the community. We saw that this past year with the number of officers that were engaging with youth, and when we think about a community engagement, we often think about our motorcycles, but I can tell you anecdotally from officers that have ridden bicycles in other detachments that our motorcycles pale in comparison to the engagement that happens on bicycles. There's just that much more accessibility. So certainly we look forward to that opportunity if the board was to approve that purchase.
Thank you. I did do a little bit of research in surrounding areas, and what do other police service boards do, and this is not an uncommon thing for other police service boards to look at items that are outside the OPP contract, and so this is something that some of our colleagues have done with their property reserve funds as well. So we're not breaking new ground in that regard. I don't know if there's any other questions, or I can keep moving through and do it as a whole thing, or you can do it one by one. Mayor Bailey?
Through you, Madam Chair, I can't support the bicycles for the OPP. We had bicycles for the OPP many years ago. I don't know what happened to them, but we used to have new recruits on bicycles. I always thought the reserve was for things like setting up scholarships for the kids or buying bicycles when we did the competitions or something like that. I thought the reserves were to stay in the community. I thought the OPP budget was enough to give them bikes if they need bikes, but I certainly never thought of the reserve of the OPP, of the Police Services Board going back to equipment and or bicycles for the OPP. So I don't support it. It's never the intention in all the years that I've been on the Police Services Board is to do things like that. So.
Yep, thank you. I guess the challenge is that there is nothing written about what that reserve fund is for, and so we have an opportunity to kind of put some policy and parameters around it. And just talking to staff, the act is clear that it can be for any purpose that the board considers in the public interest. The act is clear on that as well, so that's where I took my direction from in that regard. So, Mayor Bailey?
Yeah, and Madam Chair, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it back to my council and ask them how they feel about it, because it is money that we're used to spending in a certain way. And if you want to veer off of that, then I believe that I'm going to take it to council in camera and talk about it there and bring it back to you.
Cindy, can you help provide some guidance, please?
Sure. Through the chair. So as noted, certainly, it is the Police Services Board objective to set priorities for police services. if the board as a whole wishes to spend the reserve on bicycles or scholarship, you know, that's something that the decision, that's for the board to decide. The budget itself, you know, and how it is spent, certainly that is determined by the board as well. Ultimately, the budget is then approved by council through the broader budget process, but typically doesn't get into, you know, specific items that are discussed at the board level. But again, it is a decision of the whole board as to, you know, how and why funds are spent. So it's not an individual choice. It's a choice of the board on how you want to proceed with that.
Thank you. Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So just to be clear, the 572842, that is not a budget line, so to speak. That is money that has been, that's the, if you want to call it proceeds of crime, so to speak. So in essence, that doesn't affect our overall budget on that. What I would like to understand is, so the current balance is 5728. Do we understand what the balance was when we started 2023?
I'll turn to Heather for that.
Before 2023, it would have been 1940 less, because we brought in 1940 this year, so.
Okay. So in 2023, we didn't do anything with it then, is where I'm going.
No, I don't think we've spent this in a few years. I remember we did once, but that might have been like 5-6 years ago. We spent that on something.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Member Brown, you have a quizzical look on your face. You're good? Okay. So how do we want to proceed then with the proposal on the item? Knowing all the conversations that we had, how do we want to proceed? Councillor Pierce?
So obviously, you know, if we choose to disperse the money through any of these options here, hypothetically, if we wanted to do them all, then money would be dispersed through them, and then whatever wasn't covered by that 57 would come off of the 2024 budget, correct?
Yeah, the way I guess I laid it out in the memo was there's two items that could be considered for this year's fiscal 2023 out of the property reserve fund of the 5,700. And then the other items were for consideration on the 2024 budget that Heather's presented, the outside of the reserve, the actual police service board budget. Some of those things that are in that memo are already included in Heather's projection. Some of them aren't. Some of them are add-ons, or they're specific line items. So the first two items, I was in the method to my madness is the property reserve fund for 2023. The second part of the memo would be suggestions for consideration for 2024 police services board budget.
Okay, if I may, Madam Chair, so if we, where am I going with this? Collect my thoughts. Apologies. What I want to understand, if we were to, like, of these, so Heather, with what you have in the overall budget, are you able to give us an idea of, so I heard, I think the emergency services golf sponsorship is in there, the detachment barbecues are in there, the Christmas recognition, is that in there? I'm just trying to understand
What are the extras?
what of those items that are listed on the addendum are already considered within that initial budget. Do we know?
Yeah, just 1 second here.
Yeah, thank you.
So currently, the 10,925 that we have for the public relations, it's hard to nail down exactly what it covers because it's over budget and it's going to be way, way over budget by the end of this year.
Right.
Right? So typically we have done, let me just pull up Jen's list here again so I can see that. The Youth Academy isn't I don't think we've ever funded that one before. The community safety groups, we've never funded, so we haven't put that into our, ad. The community art contest isn't something we've done. Special Olympics, we haven't done. The golf tournament we did this year, but, and we did it out of the public relations budget. And the barbecues we've done, I think we've done them at a level of 500, I think was what we approved in past years for the barbecues. And the Christmas recognition, I know we did that last year. I think that was in there too. I'm not sure if it was $1,000 or what it was last year.
And sorry, Madam Chair, that's out of the public relations one
Yep.
as well? Okay.
That's why I think it'd be helpful if we can, I know, for me anyways, just to kind of put some line items underneath that so we know what all we've got planned or what all we are allocating it to, so that when it comes up, we know that it's already there. Member Brown?
Through you, Madam Chair. Heather, the public relations, you just said that it's going to be way, way over budget.
Yep.
Yet we're proposing the next budget or next year is going to stay the same. What do
Well,
we-
that's because that's for this board to decide what number they want to put in there. This is just based on, I'm not making any adjustments till the board decides what they want to put in there. So I'm recommending you need to increase that number, but I didn't put anything in there because I'm not going to say what it is. The only things we did was the salaries because they're standard through our bylaw.
You were just giving us the starting point.
Yep.
So one of the things we had to decide is, do we want to keep this dispatch, and do we want to do 2 of them? Do we want to do, Heather's outlined the costs associated with everybody versus some of the folks in the county. Yeah, and so other things like that, that's not, so the public relations budget right now doesn't show the second dispatch cost in there. But then on the other hand, things like training and development, we've considerably underspent. So we may be over in the public relations line item, but we're massively under in the training and development line item. Member Brown?
Just another comment. I think that if that's the case, we need to see something else that's more detailed as far as what those items are in there. And I know that's what you're trying to do with the items that you have there, but I'd like to see what it is so that we've got something accurate, because we're just pulling numbers out of the air if you're asking us to make a decision without that information.
But we never budgeted specifically for items. Like we budgeted this the idea originally of this public relations awards budget was so that if things like sponsorships came up, we could support them, or if there was the safety patroller awards, that was always funded through this public relations budget. And I don't know that, it was never specifically itemized, so we don't really have anything to start from in terms of an itemization. I could probably get someone to send me like what we actually spent it on this year, but it doesn't say how we budgeted it, because we didn't budget it for this much for this specific purpose or this much. Which is also, it's also kind of tough if you do that and then you restrict yourself to what you can spend this money on. And it was always kind of intended, it's increased a lot, but it's always been intended that, we could just build upon this depending what comes up during the year, so.
Is there any merit to just going through a summary of some of these things that are in the 2024 ideas, just so that everybody has or is it self-explanatory perhaps in the memo, Councillor Pierce?
I think it's self-explanatory in there, but my question is, in regards to the bikes, if we were to go through and do that, who do the bikes belong to? And how long, what's the shelf life of these bikes? Do we know?
So my understanding is that they would still remain the County of Brant property, just like the camera remains the County of Brant property. They'd be in the use of the OPP. And then, what was your second question?
Like, how long does a bike last?
That's a
2
good
years,
question.
5 years? Do we know?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think there'd be a number of considerations, including wear and tear. Like, I'm not sure that I could say that without consulting with the suppliers that we were looking at, but we do still have, to Mayor Bailey's earlier point, we still have the other bikes that were purchased. They're just, we did get tune-ups on them, but bikes come in different sizes. Those were size small is how it's been explained to me, so they don't fit everyone just like we would expect a bicycle for general patrol to be used. So I don't have an answer to, I guess, to your question, Councillor Pierce, about how long they would exactly last.
Mayor Bailey?
Through you, Madam Chair, I want to clarify my point. I don't mean to be argumentative. I honestly believed, and I still do believe, that the money was supposed to go back to the community somehow. And I just know, that some of the council, I mean, I know that it's to be decided at this committee, and it's a separate committee than council, and Councillor Pierce and I will take whatever happens here back to council. I understand that process. I just know that, a lot of councillors, and when I say a lot, I know of three, that believe the same thing I believe in, that this money was going for scholarships or things, or if somebody does something or helps with something, we do something big for them, or we set up a foundation for them at the Brant Community Foundation, where every year for eternity, somebody is chosen out of the county of Brant to receive a scholarship administered through the Brant Community Foundation. That costs $10,000 to set something like that up. So we would be more than halfway there for a lifetime scholarship, OPP scholarship for Brant County. So that's just what I thought. That doesn't mean that I'm right. It's just what I thought.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. Member Brown?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Mayor Bailey, I agree with your perspective from that, but I think there's different perspectives to look at it as well. I'm looking at it from the standpoint that we've got those 628 interactions with the police, with the youth, and maybe having those bikes there with the officers out and having more direct contact with them. Maybe that's a benefit to the community, and if the police are more approachable through this, they may have obtained more information that can help them deal with things, and maybe we lower some of the problem areas within. So I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I think that there's other perspectives that maybe they could be of benefit to all concerned, from the officers to the police to the community benefiting.
Mayor Bailey?
And again, through the chair to Mr. Brown, I agree with you 100%. And the way the county is laid out with so many trails and so many paths, that should be something I believe that the OPP should budget for themselves, because they know the county of Brant and how it works. And I do believe there's a huge benefit to police being on bikes in the trails. I've seen them on trails before in other places, and it's a big deal. But I mean, when you get into, as the inspector said, everyone's a different size now. And the same bike that you're going to use, Inspector, is not the bike that he's going to use. That's definitely a for sure. So, I mean, when you start to look at the inventory of what you would need to make everyone comfortable, to do a very good job, because I do believe that policing on trails is a big deal and very important. A lot of things that go wrong at the end of a beautiful trail on a nice day. So I do get that, and I do support that, but I just didn't think this money was for that.
Understood. Just a point of clarification, Inspector Quenville, can you give us some insight into, or maybe it's Cindy, the contract that the OPP has with the county and the equipment? This is my understanding. Maybe you can clarify, like, what is the OPP's position on these bicycles for any of the detachments, not just ours?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I can assure you that I've consulted with Municipal Policing Bureau and my colleagues, and bicycles do not fall within the budget line. And knowing that, like, I consulted with Oxford, with Perth, with Lambton, with Huron, and Haldeman, all of those bicycles were either a donation or through exactly this type of discussion through the reserve funds, through the Police Service Board.
Thank you. I don't know if there's nothing to add. Okay. So we have two kind of, in my mind, we have two things here. We have the reserve fund, today's discussion, and then we have the need to get kind of our 2024 budget figured out, and as Heather noted, it's what she's presented is a starting point, and we need to make sure that we're covering everything. So if I could just, I could maybe just park the bikes for just a minute, and we can come back to that, because I think I think there's some consensus perhaps on the 2024 budget that we can rally around, and make sure that Heather gets what she needs, because my understanding is we need to provide this input today, because we don't have a meeting in December, in order to get staffs into the budget cycle for council's consideration. Is that correct?
Yeah, so if I did go through and unfortunately, Member Brown has left, but I've gone through our yearly expenses because we don't spend a whole ton of expenses. So I just went through them quickly. So the money we spent that public relations on this year, 3,600 was for the OAPSB OACP meeting. 17,400 is for the Brant dispatch, including the numbers Cindy just gave me. We spent $1,000 on a sponsorship for the CMH golf tournament, and 500 on the detachment barbecues. So that's, aside from our members, that's all that we spent out of public relations
So
this
far.
year. As I said, it has shifted a few times. I do have a proposal that might, it doesn't get down to the nitty gritty, and maybe the board could work out how it spends its public relations budget later. But I would suggest maybe we would look at reducing the training and development by 42 down to $8,000. I think that's more than $1,000 a member. That should cover our costs if we're over this year. It'd be a one-time thing because of the new act coming in. I think we've played that. We put in that amount for a lot of times. 8,000 should be plenty for everybody to attend at least one conference or training session. That we could look at increasing the public relations awards budget to 25,000, which would give us plenty of money to do 2 versions of the dispatch and some other things, or 1 version of the dispatch and all the other things that we have noted that might be of interest to the board. And then getting rid of the legal services, just saving the $2,000, because as Councillor Pierce, it wouldn't get us anywhere anyways. And really, there's no sense budgeting for something bad to happen. If it happens, we'll just have to find the money for it.
Thank you, Heather. If I could get the board's temperature on, I think the dispatch. So personally, I believe we should keep the momentum moving forward. We've done 3 issues now, 2 this year, 1 last year. They're well received, and I personally would like to see 2 in 2024. But I think the sticking point that we need to decide on is the distribution, because that's a significant dollar value difference that will impact our budget. So Heather noted, that we have a split route that has a certain amount of money allocated to postage, but it doesn't cover every single county resident. And then if we wanted to pay Canada Post the additional fees to get every county residence, and there might be some slippage there with City of Brantford, depending on postal codes and addresses and whatnot, that's another $4,000 an issue. So that's $8,000 more in postage for the year to go either to everybody and I don't know if it's 3/4 that we capture on the other way. I know the county's been grappling with it with their own publications and distributions as well. I'm sure Councillor Pierce, you've talked about this a few times. So my concern would be if we went to the full amount, that's almost $23,000, and if we only have $25,000 in our public relations budget, that's most of it right there, just on those 2 issues with increasing the distribution. If we don't want to increase the distribution, then there's the $8,000 that makes up the difference, right? I know we make it available online. I know it's in every county office. It's at the detachment. It's available, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy, but if there's a resident that falls outside of that distribution that requests, they can get onto a mailing list to have things mailed to them. So there's different ways that things can get to folks. I don't know what percentage we're missing though. Like, I don't know if we're getting 75% in the initial mailing or more than that, less than that. So I don't know how you guys feel about that, but the cost benefit is it's $8,000 more for the year to do the full swath. And then that leaves us, with Heather's suggestion, that doesn't leave us a lot of wiggle room for any other opportunities. So, or we ask to, maybe we ask to bump that 25 to something higher to take into that consideration. Councillor Pierce.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So, I appreciate the suggestion, Heather. So if we were to do that, there's gotta be an additional 7,500 come from somewhere, if I'm doing my math right. So what does that put us to for an overall change? Is it like
Yep,
1% now?
So if we do that, we're looking at an overall budget change, and I did do a little bit of adjustment because the membership prices are going up as well, the OAPSB membership. So overall, we'd be looking at an $8,400 increase, which is about 21% of the board's budget.
21%?
21% increase.
As opposed to 0.5% increase?
Yep. It's because the board has a pretty small budget, but it does get down to, I mean, our budget was unsustainable as it was. If the only reason we've made it without going over budget the last couple of years is because we had grossly overestimated the training costs.
Exactly. So if we shift around some of that underspend, there's still some, and I think the other point is we spent money this year hosting the breakfast for, as Heather noted. I don't think it's our intention as a board to be doing that every year. That's kind of a every few years thing, and hopefully we can budget that for future years. So that was a unbudgeted, unplanned expense. So it is what it is. We were good hosts, but it's somebody else's turn for the next couple of years. So we can budget that down the road. So we have $3,600 that we spent on that breakfast and that meeting that can go elsewhere in the coming year. Member Brown?
You've mentioned a couple of times we don't know what the outlying areas is, the percentage of it. I know the county does this on a continuous basis with the communication. Do we have an idea what that number is? How many people we are missing? Are we better off hitting 80% of the people twice rather than 100% of the people once, especially since there are other ways that people can acquire the document, either through online or at any of the county locations? And is there a possibility that we could send out something in concert with the county at the same time that would reduce the cost to both? I don't know those answers. I don't know what the restrictions would be on that, but I've got to believe that you guys have considered it, but I'd like to benefit from that input.
Through the chair, I need to follow up with our communications folks who do this regularly. So certainly they would have, I think, some really detailed information on the two options as to who we might miss with the first option. We have in the past paired up publications between different areas, which does have a bit of savings associated with that. So the county does do a newsletter now on its own, so there could be potential with that, and split the costs that way. So there would be a bit of a reduction likely that way. That's something we could look into doing. But again, I'd have to have further conversation just to know how many we would be missing. I can tell you I received the dispatch and I live in Brantford. So I don't know if you did, Heather, or not, but I was surprised to receive it. So through the other option, again, I'm not sure how many additional people outside of the county of Brant would be receiving it as well.
Mayor Bailey?
Through you, Madam Chair, the politically correct thing to say is that we should be covering everybody every time we do anything. And unfortunately, this does happen to us all the time. And when we try to get goodwill out there, the instant the neighbor doesn't get one, it becomes a show. and we get calls, and it all turns around, and you don't hear about the 75 or 80% that are happy. You hear about the 20%, because whatever that number is, they always get missed by everything. And you can't do that to the people that are paying the same taxes for the whole county. We hear it all the time. So I would rather let Cindy see if there's anything we can do with communications, and do it right twice, or do it once right. But let's not mess it up twice, because the calls will just come in twice. That's how I feel. But if we need a little bit of extra money there, that could come out of the reserves. Just saying, it's there to be spent. I would rather do it twice right than twice wrong. Or once right.
Yeah, so this past year, or the past 3 issues have been at the recommendation of staff, has been at the, whatever the other, not the whole group, but the other group. I don't know if there's been any complaints or not complaints. I don't know if that's not my area, but I do want to commend staff, the communication staff. They do all the design and layout, and they take all the material that Inspector Quinville sends and magically turns it into this beautiful newsletter, and they take care of the coordinating of the post. So there's no cost to us for graphic design, coordinating the mailing, anything like that, because county staff do a wonderful job on that. So I did want to acknowledge that there is some benefits to our collaborations here with county staff as well. So with that being said, then Heather, you mentioned taking training down to 8, and if we were to do the full swath of 2 newsletters at approximately 22,000, and if we're going to remove legal and potentially materials and supplies, is there any? I know we're moving shelves here, but can we consider? I'll just throw out 30 for that line item, and then that leaves us with some wiggle room to be able to still do some of the other things that we've traditionally done.
So my last numbers, I didn't actually remove the materials and supplies. So if we want to do that as well, based on the 25,000, would be a 17.36% increase. And if we went to 30,000, just one sec, drum roll, it'd be up to a 29.9% increase.
What does that, if we did the 30 and the 8 and everything, whatever you removed, the earnings, whatever has to stay, what does the bottom line total number look like?
51,863.
So 11,
Almost 12,000 increase. 11,931.
how are folks feeling about that request? Yes, please, Councilor Pierce.
So I'm gonna kind of split this in 2. I'm gonna talk about the 5,700 first, and then I'm gonna talk about the budget. Okay?
Just to be different. Yep.
No, but they are, to me, they're 2 separate things.
Yeah. No.
Okay? So for the 5,700, I'm gonna throw a suggestion out there. And it's not even using it all, Madam Chair. It's about $400 and some odd less than that 5,700. If we were to do the Special Olympics in the Youth Academy, that's definitely community. The Christmas at the detachment, barbecue at the detachment, the golf tournament, the scanner, and 1 bike, that puts it to $5,300, right? So that gets that out of the way. I'm just throwing an option out there. And then in the overall budget, to me, and I 100% agree with the mayor, we've heard this a lot, if we're sending out anything, it's got to go to everybody. I think that's the right thing to do, whether it's the politically correct or whatever. It is the right thing to do to get everybody in there. As much as I appreciate the information that's in those, maybe for a year we just do one and see how that goes. that would be the 11,000 or whatever it is, which is going to reduce that overall budget down to probably 8 or 9% ish. And I think that it's gonna be a tough year for budgets overall. Like we're, as far as I put my council hat on, as far as council this year, I think it's fair to say that as every other surrounding municipality with us, we're going to be double digits. There's going to be no way around it, and that's a sour pill to swallow. It's going to be a very, very difficult pill to swallow. But I think if we were to bring our increase down, which we do need to increase it, I think our past budgets will show us. But if we were to come in, some sort of single digit for police services, which is still going to give us the increases we need, I totally agree with adjusting the getting rid of the legal, putting the materials down, and I was even going to say to put the training and development down to 5,000, because that's still almost 4 times what we spent this past year, and kind of move things around that way. So that's kind of what's going through my head, and I'm just looking, because we could sit here all day and talk through this.
Yeah, and I guess, totally respect that you folks have to then have a bigger discussion in terms of the budget. And where I guess my mind is coming from is, since I've joined the board, we've never spent anywhere near what was allocated to us over the years. Like 2021, we only spent $14,000, and for various reasons, COVID, but even before COVID, we're just getting into our stride now, and we're getting some momentum on some of these initiatives, and I would hate to lose some of that momentum, whatever that may be, not specific to one thing. We're doing a great job with the partnerships that we've established, and I would just hate to see some of that momentum lost. Respect the piece about everybody versus some of the folks, and we're going to have to eat that. Some people are going to get, like Cindy, are going to get it that aren't intended to get it as well. I don't know if there's a better way to figure out how to better get things into people's hands. That's the communications department is probably pulling their hair out about that all the time. So I guess I'm trying to advocate to get enough money to be meaningful and to keep the momentum moving forward, respecting that you've got some tough decisions at council to have to make, but there's also some benefits that we can provide back to the community as well. So how do we marry the two up together? Yeah, that's the challenge. Heather?
Going off that theme, if we were to say commit 5,000 to training and development, and recognize that maybe that people may have to drive down somewhere and drive back the same, depending on what the training requirements are, hopefully there'll be online options that'll be less expensive. Maybe the ministry, if they're implementing this new act, will be coming forward with some money for training. If we say 5,000, or even 6,000, 5 members, 1,000 each, then we can put the public relations up at 25 again, and the increase would be 9.84.
Sorry, Heather, we'll go to 6 members when the new act comes into place, right? Because our board will be reconstituted and we've got a 6-member.
Yeah, it'll be a while before we get that.
Well, my understanding is it would happen. I don't know. There's so many different pieces of information. And so you said to go back to 25. Didn't you already have it at 25?
Well, I had, when I brought it back down to, we looked at 20 and 30, and those are the numbers. We've been moving back up and down, but if you wanted to, I'm saying 30 is probably not going to be reasonable, but if you wanted to stick with the 25, and still stay under 10%, then the training at 5 would get you there.
I don't have a number, a percentage increase that I'm shooting for, because I don't know what Mayor Bailey and Councillor Pierce are thinking of. So that's, not anything I'm not looking at a percentage, I'm just looking at what do we need to do to accomplish some of our goals this year. So, Mayor Bailey, you?
Through you, Madam Chair, with all respect, I'm just saying that if what Councillor Pierce just said makes perfect sense to me. Because to do it any other way looks like we're giving the OPP some bikes and then we're asking the county for more money. And that doesn't make any sense to me. And it's got, and I think the goodwill that this board has put together with the OPP is steady, and I think the OPP knows that we appreciate them and all of that. But we never were able to do things like Christmas and other things that we do now, which are big numbers, 1,600, 750, whatever they all are. And I think that's great that we do those, but if we have those in our reserve, then why wouldn't we make it a responsible budget through the police services so that we can come under 1%, which makes us look very responsible to council because they'll rip this apart. I mean, this is a tough year for us, and it really, it really is. Councillor Pierce is telling you the real truth. It's never been tougher. So I just don't know how it's going to be seen if we do this, because there'll be publicity that comes with the giving of the bikes by the Police Services Board, and then the Police Services Board asking for 21% of an increase in a budget. It doesn't make any sense.
Member Brown?
Through you, Madam Chair, I agree with the comments that are being made that we need to be responsible. When Heather mentioned 30%, it's tough times for everybody. I'm not a politician, and that number doesn't sit very well with me as well. I think we need to be responsible as we can. We do have a lot of room to move around in here in some things, but I think we need to know if there's some efficiencies that can be achieved. If that's what we're looking for, you know, we can cut distribution costs down by pairing it up with community thing. That may bring it down to where we can achieve what we want and still still put out the extras that we would like to do without spending the extra funds. I think that's what we really need to look at right now. And I look forward to that input.
Inspector Quinville, Councillor Pierce had suggested one bike. Is that of any value? I'm just trying to understand what your allocation would be.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would have to go back and evaluate the current qualified riders versus what we currently have in stock, and then that one bike, because the officers will never go out as an individual on that. That'd likely be paired. So I would have to evaluate whether that would still be an advantage to purchase that one bike. And maybe it becomes part of a plan, a 3-year plan or something like that, to go, okay, one bike this year, one bike the next year, or something like that, to Mayor Bailey's point, to mitigate the public perception, I guess is fair to say, about just giving the OPP bikes. It could be part of a longer term plan, but I would have to, like I said, go back and evaluate the current bicycles we have and the ridership we have qualified to actually operate the bikes too. So I would have to get back to you.
Councillor Pierce?
And how many bikes do we have now, Madam Chair?
I believe Inspector Quinville said 2. Correct me if I'm wrong.
3.
Three.
Two size small and one size medium.
So it is a reserve fund, so we don't have to make decisions today with respect to specifics. It does carry forward into the new year as well, so we can come back to this in January once we have some additional information. Councillor Pierce, you had suggested, can you please review that again? The Youth Academy.
I would, yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I Special Olympics, Youth Academy, Christmas, the barbecue, and the CAMH Golf Tournament donation, and the scanner.
And the scanner?
Yep.
And did you do any quick math on that?
I did. Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was also adding in 2 bikes and 1 bike and all that kind of stuff.
So no bikes.
So with no bikes, then it drops it down to about just over $4,000.
Okay. And that does not include the community safety groups, correct?
Sorry, it would be just under 5, I guess it would be. And sorry, that's nothing
Okay.
for the community safety. The ones that I did not put to was nothing for the community safety group, nothing for the art contest. Those were the only two.
Yeah, it's almost $5,000.
Yeah. Out of that reserve part.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can we get the art? Can we get the art out of that too?
I believe
is out of
it's not, it's
Oh, thank you.
just for information, the detachment barbecues, we said that's the money that we said, but I don't believe it's ever come in at that amount. Like we say the maximum, and same thing with the Christmas, we say the maximum, but it's always come in a couple $100 less than, just for information. So, okay, so Councillor Pierce's suggestion about the reserve, funds for the approximately $4,900 for those items for that's for 2024. And then where does that leave us then with the board operating budget in terms of, Heather, I'm hoping you've kept track of some of the back and forth numbers.
Well, I guess in terms of if we still wanted to move forward with two brand detachments, just looking to see what else we would have to pay for. Our public relations budget could go down as low as, if we didn't include anything else, 20,000. Which would take us to 2.68%. Or if there was any of those other items, if they wanted to put in some money for the community safety groups or some of that, then we can add into that line for some of those other. But that takes out almost everything else we've spent that public relations budget on in 2023. So that would all be covered under that reserve fund. So we would just be trying to pay for the dispatch through this.
So if my quick math, what you said there, Heather, so if we, obviously part-time earnings, employee benefits, no materials and supplies,
That's what training goes down to 5.
training down to, so I left training at 8 just for
Okay.
calculation, and then we
Yep.
can always change it. I left training at 8, that covers conferences, training, whatever's gonna come our way. 2650 for memberships and
I
subscriptions.
bumped that up to 3,500 because it's definitely going to be more.
Oh, okay, I left it at the proposed, okay,
Yeah.
3,500. So then, that's the difference of 900, all right? And then leaving 25,000 in the public relations and awards, knowing all the other pieces coming out of the reserve potentially, nothing for legal, nothing for donations. We are at 46,800, so it's $6,800 more than what Heather had proposed. I don't know what percentage that
That
is.
percentage is 17.3.
Okay, so then if we took the, you said training down to 5, that would give us 43,800 and a different
9.84.
9.84%. Councilor Pierce?
And just to confirm, Madam Chair, that's with the Brant Dispatch going full twice.
That's the potential of the Brant Dispatch going full twice, but it sounds like we need to have some chats and conversations with staff to look at cost-saving measures. Doubling up on somebody else's distribution or something along those lines. Councilor Pierce?
Thanks, Madam Chair, and I know this isn't gonna be popular, because I am a fan of the Brant Dispatch, but maybe we need to look at hitting everybody once, because that would save us $10,000 in essence. Like I say, I don't want to, but that, are we able to understand, well, no, that would, that would actually be less than what we have now, if we were to only do it once.
Mayor Bailey?
Yeah, I would, hopefully Councillor Pierce could make a motion to everything you just said, with doing it twice properly, knowing that we have pretty sound resources in communications that we could almost count on. And I think if the motion passed, you got a seconder, we could move quickly on the communication part.
I would put forth the motion of things I went through and the adjustments, as Heather noted, to materials went down to nothing, training down to 5.
I can put this on the screen if everybody wants to.
Membership up to 35, and then public relations up to 25.
That would be great, Heather.
Josh, can you?
I'm prepared to second it.
So Councillor Pierce, just while Heather's getting herself connected, just so we are clear on the items for the reserve fund for 2024, the scanning equipment, the youth academy, Special Olympics, the golf tournament, barbecues, and the Christmas recognition. No bikes and no community safety group. Correct?
And no art.
Sorry?
And the art.
And art, yeah. Yeah, just making sure, because originally you'd said 1, but we'll leave it for now. We can always come back in 2024 and revisit it if once Inspector Quenneville has some more information. Mayor Bailey?
Madam Chair, I think this is a really good idea only because it's going to make us very responsible. We didn't have a place for that reserve money to go. Now we will have, because it'll be the first thing on your agenda for the new year. We'll say where that money goes and what it's to be used for. But this is going to be a tight budget, and I think that it's going to make police services look very responsible. And then the first thing in the new year, we'll talk, because that money is going to come back. That $5,700 will come back to us again. And then we can have a policy as to where it goes. And if it doesn't go to the community, we'll just say so, and it'll be part of our the way it's going to go. But at least we'll know, and it'll be clear for 2024.
Okay, Heather, it's got it up on the screen now. So we're looking at, with all the adjustments we've made to the different numbers and line items, reducing where possible, maintaining some of the discussions that we've had, a budget request of $43,863 for fiscal 2024. I'll note, I know that 9.84, I think Heather made a comment, the smaller the budget, the higher the percentage numbers. That's only $4,000 more than last year, for last year's budget of $39,932. I know I shouldn't say only, it's still significant, but I want to put things into perspective, because the 9.84% sounds a lot different when we talk about percentages versus dollar value. So I'm hoping, John, you could make some magic happen to find $4,000 when you guys go to council for the whole budget process.
I'll leave it at that.
Well, we'll see what. So this is the where we're landing with the proposal before we get into that motion that Councilor Pierce is prepared to make, in addition to the other piece that we already talked about for the specific line items out of the property reserve fund. How are we, John or Councilor Pierce? Are we good for this?
I'm good with it.
This motion?
Yeah.
Are you prepared to make that?
I am.
Briar, do you want that in 2 separate motions, or do you want that? Okay. So the first motion will be for the 2024 budget proposal as
Okay.
presented.
Yeah.
A seconder for that? You'll put that forward?
Yeah.
Yes. Seconder for that? Mayor Bailey? Any other discussion? Member Brown?
Just want to clarify, because I think I know what it is, but are we intending on 1 communication or 2?
Yet to be determined, I think.
Okay.
We're hoping for 2.
Hoping to. 2 full.
All right.
Yes. 2. So any other discussion then before we call the question? All right, so the motion then, Councilor Pierce, Mayor Bailey, proposing the 2024 budget request of $43,863 for the Police Service Board. All those in favor? That's carried. Okay, thank you, Heather, for putting that up on the screen. That was very helpful. The second item then, the second motion for Briar to record is the specifics of the scanning equipment, the youth academy, Special Olympics, golf tournament, barbecue, and Christmas recognition for 2024 to be allocated from the property sales reserve fund as discussed.
Correct.
Someone want to make that a motion? Member Brown, seconded by Mayor Bailey. Any other discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor of that? That's carried. Thank you, everybody. I know that was a little bit of a tough slug, but we made it through, and it's important work, so appreciate everybody's perspectives, and the diversity of our conversation is important to bringing all that forward. Okay, that takes us, is there any other things you need on, before, I just want to make sure. I don't believe we have any communications at this time to review. So let's move into updates, because we do need to be mindful of time, and we still have an in-camera session. Councillor Pierce, anything from you on council?
Nothing at this point.
Okay, thank you. Other than you're gonna have a busy day, and you're gonna have some tough budget deliberations in the new year.
That's an understatement.
Yes. Member Verhey's not here today for Zone 4. I don't believe, I haven't seen anything come through from anything on Zone 4, so I don't believe that there's anything of urgent nature. I'll just quickly, we've all talked about the dispatch quite a bit here, but the fall edition is out. Had some folks in the community comment about what a great information source it is. Thanks again to county staff for helping us put all that together, and to Inspector Quenville's team for putting together such a broad spectrum of information and community outreach. So thank you for that. We continue to work on, and I'll maybe have, if there's any questions, but Cindy and myself and Inspector Quenville continue to work on the community safety group terms of reference. Cindy, I don't know if there's anything you want to provide there.
Sure, just through the chair. When the terms of reference were released to the current groups, they asked a number of questions and had comments. So we've been working through those. And a couple of things, I guess, snags at this point are just around insurance coverage. And I've been off, just returning from vacation. So I do need to follow up with our insurance and legal staff to work through some of that, and kind of get a clear understanding of the groups and their status or relationship with the county. So my intent would be to get some clarity around that, and hopefully come back in January with the terms of reference that were originally presented.
So work continues on, oh, sorry, Mayor Bailey, did you have a question?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, to Cindy. Have you had all the groups together yet?
Through the chair, no, they have not all been together. They were sent the terms of reference, and I know that Chair Haley offered to come out and speak to the groups. They all just provided their information back in writing. They didn't wish to meet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I do think though that once this is finalized, that definitely an in-person meeting is warranted to try to work through some of the changes with them.
I think so too. Thank you.
So all that to say is that work continues on that. We'd hoped to have that wrapped up sooner, but it's important to get things right, to do it right, not necessarily do it fast. So with the questions that have been raised, and with them not really having a home per se for, you know, where does it land and how does it get covered and how does it all work? So Cindy's got some homework to track down, and then Inspector Quenville and I can recircle with Cindy on that, and then bring back hopefully some recommendations for you guys to review. I don't really know the timeline, but obviously at this point it's in the new year. And to Mayor Bailey's point, the plan is definitely to then meet with the groups again and be able to outline some of those options. Inspector Quenville and I also met with Emily O'Cal about the community safety and well-being plan, just as an update and to kind of get an idea of where things are fitting in terms of a path forward. And I just wanted to acknowledge Staff Sergeant Bruce Harshnitz's passing with the auxiliary. He was 20-year volunteer auxiliary member, and before that he was with the town of Paris as a volunteer as well. Jim and I were able to attend his visitation, and I just wanted to compliment Staff Sergeant McTaggart and his team for the support that they showed that day to the family, and to be able to provide that ceremonial piece together with the auxiliary to Bruce's service. So thank you very much for doing that. And I know it's a big loss for the detachment. Many people have worked with him for many years as a 20-year person here in the county. And I know being a staff sergeant, his leadership will be missed. And I know they're working on figuring out what that looks like in the path forward. Yeah, so I just wanted to acknowledge that he's been quite a committed volunteer in our community, and he'll be missed in the auxiliary unit. So if there's nothing else, we will need a motion now to go in camera, please. Member Brown and Mayor Bailey, thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried, so we'll just wait for technology to catch up. Okay, thank you. We're back from our in-camera session. Thank you, everybody here. I just want to, just because we're not going to be meeting in December, I wanted to wish everybody a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, however you celebrate. Um, we've done a lot this past year, and we have a lot to be thankful for, and a lot of good work that's happening in our discussions and our collaborations. And I'm just thankful for everybody's contribution. So enjoy the holidays, and hopefully everybody has a little bit of time to rest and relax and recharge the batteries for what's going to be an exciting 2024. Our next meeting is scheduled now for January, whatever was in that report. Thank you, January 23rd here in council chambers. And unless anything comes up otherwise, we'll see you in January. So we'll have the meeting adjourned. Have a great day, everybody.